Good afternoon. How are you? Well, it's I don't know, 60 something. It's feels you can feel the moisture, but it's not yet wet. And it's pleasant. And it's getting darker, and it's somewhat overcast. So that's the end of my Jeffersonian report. We'll call it the TJ report from now on. My overall reaction to the principal concerns we have, mostly political but not exclusively, are that the circle closes. And we're talking about Trump, but also the design of those who exist in the Trumposphere, which is a mad, crazy place where reason is left behind, appetite and obsession are the rule of the day, lies are manifest constantly. And so what I think when I say the circle closes is that by degrees we have increasing opposition to Trump. It's been gradual, but over days and now months, it's becoming a stronger force in America. And that's good for America, because it's restoring America to its greater former destiny, which was to try to figure out how to be democratic and how to make the republic work and how to promote the general welfare, but all the other functions that are in the Constitution. And if we were to choose any one thing that would illustrate the failure of the new Republican leadership to actually lead in a constructive fashion to achieve for America a government that we could trust, that would deal with the serious problems and not choose winners and losers, but try to find and maximize a way that we enjoy a general welfare, all of us, despite our differing views on some things that may not matter in the public sphere. So today, as I speak to you, I'm aware, as probably you are, that the House, in fact, refuses to find a package that the House of Representatives could agree to. They rejected the proposal from the Senate, a bipartisan proposal supported by McConnell and Schumer, and they put on the floor a plan, and Republicans joined Democrats to defeat it. So you have some idea there's a vitality within the Republican conference that is responsible, but they're not in the leadership positions. We have people like Congresswoman Green who would deny pay to a cabinet secretary because she disagrees with him, reduce his salary to $1. That's just not the way we run government. If he's not done anything wrong and he has a different view, and there's a different government, that is to say, president choosing the cabinet, that should be left up to the executive branch. She's got no business doing that. It's kind of specific punishment. But you see that there's a reason why the Republicans oppose government. They don't know how it works, and they don't know how to make it work when they're in charge, even in the House. But this is not to say that all Republicans are so infirm as are these leaders. We have McCarthy in a typical selfish spin in which he's hoping by appeasing the most extreme members of his conference, the Republican conference in the House, that he should continue as Speaker by fearfully acceding to these most extreme requests that they have that cannot pass in the House. And so we have stasis. We have an immovable government because the aspect of negotiation that is compromise, that is reasonable compromise, doesn't exist for the extreme members of the Republican conference. So that allows us to anticipate a closed government. That is to say, so many thousands of people in and out of government, so many functions that are served by government, so many people who rely on these aspects are all going to be put adrift because of the petty, insane positions of this narrow band of yahoos in the Republican conference. Now, so that's an example of, I think, the increasing degrees, prompting resistance to the Republican leadership idea of chaos preferred over governance. Now let's go back to the commander-in-chief of this government of chaos, Trump. Trump has been trying to avoid an outcome in a New York case in which the judge considered filings by the parties, Trump on the one hand, the AG on the other. The filings were claims by the government in particular that the following facts are not in dispute, involving fraud by Trump and his minions. And apparently, the judge was unable to find anything that put in dispute those facts. So based on what they call a motion in summary judgment, that is to say, if there are no facts in dispute, then what we have is a situation in which we can apply the law to those facts that are not in dispute and decide where the case stands. The judge did that and came down powerfully against Trump for his fraud. And the judge came down against the lawyers for repeating frivolous motions unsupported by different facts and charged each of them, as I understand it, $7,500. Now, a case, not all cases, but often cases are divided into two parts. Liability, meaning you did it, you did the deeds, and then damages and perhaps sanctions. Okay, so when the judge made that decision in New York and said, whoa, you guys are in the middle of a big fraud. You don't even know the dimensions of your own apartment in the Golden Towers of Trumpville. And so the judge just went after him. And this guy's expertise, Trump's, is supposed to be in real estate and value and so forth. When he's overvaluing if it gives him some advantage, and devaluing if that gives him an advantage. So on Monday morning, although Trump did his darndest to try to delay this trial, there's going to begin the trial on the damage part of the case, because the judge has decided you've got liability, you did the deed, you lied. Okay, so now what are the consequences? And the consequences are going to be, likely anyhow, to shut down his businesses and make them disgorge fortunes to the government. Now this is an example of how, and I mentioned this before, how the Attorney General has been at this like one of my Jack Russells with a bone in its teeth since 2019. And now in 2023, she's finally bringing it home, because she's going to crash and burn this whole damn Trump empire. It's going to be over. So the man who's a not so unsubtle genius is going to get his comeuppance. And in an area that must drive him crazy because he just loves pretending, overstating what he's worth in every forum that he goes to. So this is going to kill him, really kill him. And we're talking metaphorically, gang. And what else is going on? Well, this afternoon, there's been a break in the case in Georgia. Prosecutor in that case has gotten someone to come forward, name is Hall, to plead guilty and to cooperate and to testify. Now, you may remember there's so many stories about these different cases, but there was an incursion, if you will, into the Coffee County election place with experts to seize and copy all the information there. So what does Hall give us? Hall gives us Powell, Sidney Powell, because she went to that location. So this is the most unwelcome thing for old Sidney. And Sidney's trial, at her insistence, is October the 23rd, unless they've changed the date, but it was in October. So, and this is how these cases can work. That is, people come forward, and the first ones through get the best deals. When I was a prosecutor, there was a guy involved in very complicated stock fraud cases, and he did this whole deal. He hid his own money, and he came forward to cooperate with the government, and hoping to get the least punishment so he could enjoy wherever he hid his rewards afterwards. And although it was a tortured case, that's kind of how it ended up. So Hall today, as I understand it, entered misdemeanors for the felonies he was charged with, and has agreed to probation, and I think it's for 5 years. In exchange, he gives, he's debriefed and tells the truth to them and testifies at the trial. First one up with Sidney Powell. Now, he also has another interesting person that he's tied with, Jeffrey Clark. You may remember Jeffrey was in the Department of Justice, and he wanted to write a letter to Georgia, and he wanted to be made the acting attorney general to do so, firing the then current acting attorney general, because it would serve Trump, and Trump was for it and was going to do it until it got to the point where the people of justice said, we're all going to walk out. And so Trump backed off when he saw that that's what was going to happen. So Jeffrey Clark is having a very unpleasant evening. And he had a 63-minute conversation with Hall. And I don't know if that's just phone records or that's a tape recording, but that's how long the conversation was. The statement of facts that Hall probably made in court, I haven't reviewed, don't have access to yet, but if I do and it has anything that I should add, I'll tell you about it. So, Clark was one of two guys who wanted the federal court to say he could be tried in the federal court, not the state court. That failed. Failed for Meadows too, and Trump has withdrawn his request to be tried in federal court. That's going nowhere. So a couple of things are going to be happening. Think of this. This is, again, the circle closing, in my opinion. The trial in Georgia, set to begin October 23, with Sidney Powell and Hall testifying, is going to be on TV. The nation is going to see in the courtroom, under direct and cross-examination, what these sons of bitches did. And there won't be a dry eye in the house. crying with laughter at how these people are being brought so low. The circle closes. The degrees move on. And what do you think is going to be the result in New York? When after Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday, Trump is homeless, his empire is closed. The great wealthy former president who never should have been. The circle closes. The degrees move on. Now, there's a thing I've been concerned about, and it's not just because I'm getting older, but aging and ageism in America is one of our isms, one of our discriminations that we don't handle well. And I think the final days of Senator Feinstein were made more desperate to a woman who still had her senses, but was severely challenged by illnesses and weaknesses and so forth. And it cannot have helped in her final days that so many people were telling her what to do and to resign. And when you consider the ambition level by which any of these people get into these jobs, it's almost impossible. And the other function of this is, let's move the older people out of the way so we can get their jobs. And that was true for Feinstein in California. And I'm not going to cast aspersions at the overabundance of ambition to fill her position. But now we have another question, and that is, as there's an open seat, because she did die at 90, who will fill it? Now, I believe that if any of the people who want to run for that office think they should get it, they're wrong. Because the people should decide this. And the governor has said this before the pressure begins, like sometime this morning or last evening, for him to appoint certain people. And he described the kind of person he would appoint, but I don't think he would want to appoint or support someone who's not going to be subject to election based on the fact that the people choose them instead of the governor. So that's going to be a tough thing. So what is the penalty for where we are today? The penalty is that as the circle closes and some of these people disappear and are crushed in the black hole of politics, what is the collateral damage? Well, it's significant. And it's a shame that we couldn't get our act together because of an errant, inert Attorney General. We blew 2 years. We'd be in a better position had we not done that. For example, if we had done some of this before the midterms, we might at least have elected Republicans and Democrats who would try to work together. But to tell people you can get away with doing whatever you want is not a prescription for good government. And we've seen that. And so the government may be shut down for several weeks or more. And I'm not sure who can be the teacher in the room and hit them with a slide rule and say, get your act together. So it's an impasse caused by the irresponsibility of many elected officials to say, stop that, to prosecute, to seek sanctions, to hold hearings in our elective bodies. And some of the changes that we've seen are due to the courts. The best changes, in my opinion. And some people are finding out how strong they are. Willis in Georgia is one example. Judge Chutkan in D.C. is another. The New York prosecutor, Bragg, I think he overcame concerns and resistance he had to going forward, and he had to do it in his own way. He had to have the feeling that he had control over it. And when I say control, I'm not talking about just for the sake of control. Whatever his gifts and limitations are, he may know them best. And he may have been concerned that as one prosecutor goes out the door and says, hey, this is a good case prosecuted, that person thinks they're going to get the plaudits of the public, and when it goes wrong, it's going to be Bragg who's at the scene of the failure. So I think we're still moving forward. The fight's getting intense. I think that Biden is recognizing it, or he would not have given that speech the other day telling us what democracy is, and basically saying that Trump is no small d Democrat who cares about our republic. So I say good evening from the Cathedral of Trees, and I look forward to talking to you tomorrow. Bye-bye.